Hi guys, this is Henry and welcome to another episode on AF Swift Tutorials. In this episode, I'd like to show a relatively new feature that has come to Swift, which is async and await, and how could we replace a result type with callbacks with async and await features. So we're gonna create a web service and a basic view model. We will be using a typical JSON placeholder which returns a user, and I will speed up this part and I will come back when we're gonna be writing a web service. So let's go to the code. Okay, so here I have created enum with our URL and a struct user that the JSON placeholder returns to us. It consists of ID, user ID, title, and completed of the following types. And also I've created show data function that will return our user in string format. So also we need to add codable protocol in order to make use of embedded JSON decoder and encoder. Alright, so now let's create a web service to fetch our user data, and it's gonna be class web service. And function fetch data from URL. And in this case, we're gonna be returning user. We don't need a completion handler, but we mark our return type as async and throws, because it can throw an error. And it could be an optional, it returns an optional user. So let's add a guard. To cast our URL from optional. And else we return nil if URL failed. Alright, and another, we need a URL session from data. And this function returns data and response. And it can fail. So we need a keyword try, and in this case we add await. It means that this function also is asynchronous, so we need await until it completes. So it's URL session shared, and now we need this function data from URL marked as async throws, and here we paste our URL. We don't really need response, we're not gonna be using it, so we can replace it with a wildcard pattern to omit our response. We just need data. So now let's create a user, and again it's gonna be try. And we're gonna be using JSON decoder in this case, and we're gonna be decoding from data of type user self, and we're decoding from our data and return user. Okay, so that's it with a web service. It's different from callback because we don't have any other arguments except URL, and we just return optional user. Let's create user view model in order to show our user data inside of the view. And we need observable object for our Swift UI. And we need user, which should be published. Var user of type user and optional because we don't have it yet, and method get user. This method also is gonna be async because we're gonna be using our web service and async fetch data method. As our fetch data could fail, so we need do try catch block. Alright, and here we can create a user equals try await our web service fetch data, and here we're gonna be using our constant and user URL raw value. In order to add our user, we just fetched from API and assign it to add published user. We need something like dispatch queue main async, which we add in order to process that data on make queue. Self.user equals user. Okay, so now let's add state object. Private var user view model, which is gonna be user view model. And here we can add our user view model. User show data, which is in our case optional, as user is optional type, so we will add nil call as an operator and a default no data value. If our user is nil, we will get no data in our text label. And for a button, we need to call the user view model get user method. And this is async, so again we need to add await user view model get user. But also we need something inside of the button action as async block. And in order to make it work, we need to surround our await user view model get user with a task closure. Just like this. And now it should work. Let's try it. And in our simulator, we click fetch user and we're getting our user data. But we can make this code even better. Instead of using dispatch queue main async in user view model, we can add something called add main actor. And it makes our code come back to main queue automatically. So now we can delete dispatch queue main async. We don't need it anymore. And our code should work as well using main actor without dispatch queue. Let's try it. Fetch user data, and it works. So that's it. That's how we use async await features in Swift. If you found this video interesting or useful, give it a like. Consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't done it yet. And I will see you next episode. Bye bye and take care.